Joshua Lisec here with my friend and client. I'm so excited to introduce him to you, my audience, today. Of course, some of you will already know him. He's the retired United States Air Force Colonel Robert Maness. Rob, how are you doing today?
Good, Josh. How are you doing, Joshua?
Pretty dandy. Thank you very much. So you are the author of What You Can Do About It. Would you tell, before we get into the subject of the book, would you kind of give people the too long didn't read of your bio? What is your experience, Air Force, and then transitioning into civilian life, and some of the influence that you have had, which has been significant on, let's say, a philosophy that we talk about in the book of Americanism as a proper ism for us, beyond, let's say, other slogans and ideas and what we the people should be focusing on. But Rob Maness, Americanist.
Thank you for bringing that word up. You know, my friend Dennis Haw, who is an Air Force Academy graduate, wrote software for like rovers on Mars, spaceships, aircraft, all kinds of stuff. Wrote a book called The Road to Americanism, and that's where I got first introduced to that term. But my background is, look, I'm an Air Force brat, what they call a military brat. My dad was an enlisted man in the Air Force. Neither he nor my mom graduated from high school. They're from West Tennessee. And my three brothers and I grew up traveling around the world with him, including our first introduction to Islamism in Morocco in the late 60s, early 70s, when there was a lot going on there from Islamic terrorists, as a matter of fact. But I later enlisted in the Air Force myself right after high school. Actually, before high school was even over, I was already enlisted. And did bomb disposal training and bomb disposal work as an enlisted man. And of course, a large part of that is focusing on terrorism. I have this background that for some reason I've been like the Forrest Gump of terrorism around the world and inside the country, and learned a lot about it, and then become a professional in countering that early in my life, my professional life. I went to college at night school while I was enlisted. And graduated from the University of Tampa in Tampa, Florida, place where I also bought my first house. And then became a aeronautical navigator after navigator training in the U.S. Air Force. And I've flown in a variety of aircraft. I've done air refueling operations early on. Most of my times in the B-1 bomber. I've commanded a squadron of B-1s in that time frame. I've flown and been qualified in an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft. Most people know one of them as the rivet joint, and had command of all kinds of organizations that are deeply involved in protecting this country, both from a terrorism perspective, obviously, and heavily involved in nuclear weapons, not development, but design, and nuclear safety, operating in the nuclear mission world from the perspective of Air Force Global Strike Command and Strategic Air Command, those kind of things. Did a tour at the Pentagon, was in the Pentagon on 9/11, speaking of being close to terrorist events. I was working there in the National Military Command Center, and later got pulled into a group called the Future Operations Group that Secretary Rumsfeld stood up on the fly after that attack, and we helped put the plan together to respond, and then help the response before I went back to fly B-1 bombers. Left the Air Force in 2011. My wife got breast cancer out of the blue. I was about almost 18 months into my most senior command tour, wing commander out of Kirtland Air Force. And when that happened, and we decided to go ahead and get out, take care of her. We had a 4 or 5 year old kid at home, a 12-year-old still at home. Of our 5 kids, 2 of them were still there and very young, so we needed to focus on her. And I went to work for a utility corporation called Entergy Corporation, a Fortune 500 company out of New Orleans, as their director of safety training. And 2 years into that, a small group of veterans came to me and said, somebody's got to run for U.S. Senate because the Republicans in Louisiana have picked a Democrat that used to be donor to the incumbent, who is Mary Landrieu, which the Landrieu family in Louisiana is a very long trail of Democrat office holders, and Mary was one of the latest. As a matter of fact, at the time, I think her brother Mitch was mayor of New Orleans at about that same time frame. So very old family, been in politics a long time. And the Republicans decided that one of her biggest donors, and a government doctor named Bill Cassidy, should be the guy. So we looked at it, saw that we could have a path to victory, even though I was just 2 years out of the Air Force, wasn't born in Louisiana. But the messaging, Joshua, is the thing that that really took off. It wasn't me. I mean, yes, we branded me as a retired colonel and talked about the military experience and all that. But the real thing was what my campaign managers used to call the Zeitgeist. We ran on securing the border. These are all going to sound familiar. Stopping the endless war policy that we've been involved in for like 30 years almost. Instead of a country of America leading from the perspective of prosperity and peace and strength, we became the America that looked more like the Roman Empire, and leading with military force and having military governors around the world than anything else. And then energy independence were the top three big things. You know, in those days, I said that we could become energy independent within 5 years. I never dreamed what Donald Trump would be able to do. And he ran on very similar platform the following year and won the presidency, that we could be energy dominant and be the world's leading exporter of oil and gas, and be energy dominant in the world. I never dreamed that we could achieve that, and he did it in a couple of years. So the message was the important thing, and we realized as we raised millions of dollars, we raised over $3.5 million in that campaign, and I was a nobody. Came out of nowhere, and I just was able to articulate the message, did okay in the debates, held my own, and we scared the heck out of the establishment Republicans. So much so that I think I could safely say that Mitch McConnell has spent millions of dollars to keep me out of federal office, maybe even out of local office, for that matter. And why is that? Why is that? Was it the messaging? Yeah, partly the messaging, because at that time, you know, the Tea Party had just had their big, you know, in 2000. This was in the 2011-12 timeframe, or 13 timeframe when I raced. The Tea Party had their big phase in 2010, and was still pretty active at the time. And the Republicans were supporting immigration to the point where it was a replacement theory that the Democrats were pushing, and the Republican establishment was supporting it too. You know, and then you add on to that illegal immigration and the national security threats associated with it, in addition to the threat of what we're seeing play out on the country stage today, Mamdani, in New York City, what's going on in Texas, these Sharia law enclaves being attempted, and those kind of things. All of that was tied to those policies. And those policies were supported and aggressively touted by Republicans in those days. And of course, you know, the endless war policy, that's big dollars for the campaign coffers of the politicians that are in power, big dollars for our allies that are getting to live off of that stuff. And I'm not just talking about NATO. I'm talking about our Saudi Arabian allies, our Israeli allies. I mean, everybody was getting big dollars. But it comes in the price of American blood quite often. And as somebody that's been a commander 3 times, most of the people that I talk to when I'm a commander are under the age of 23. You know, I had about 2,800 people in my wing directly and under my command at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and 90% of them were between the ages of 18 and 23. You know, So those young people are the ones signing up to volunteer to serve their country, and they're the ones that pay the price in blood quite often for our mistakes. And I think everybody could see now that we made some huge mistakes, even in the war that we should have initially did, which was the Afghanistan response. I am not opposed to that, but in 2005, at the end of my last combat tour, my deputy and I outbriefed the Air Force commander and said, "Sir, we don't have a strategy. It's time to go home. We've defeated the enemy that attacked us. Let these people have their country back." But the senior leadership chose what? A path to try to create a democracy in America's image, which is a disaster every single time you try it because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know, and who pays the price? These young men and women that volunteer to do that. So those are the biggest issues that I think are still the major issues today. They may be phrased a little bit differently, but they're the major issues today. We see it. You know, the situation in Iran is an attempt by this president to end a war that's been going on since 1979. The situation in Ukraine, the president's not able to be as fast as he wanted to be or he thought he could be, but he's still trying. He's trying to end this war. Between Russia and Ukraine that he doesn't think would have ever started and probably wouldn't have under his policy and his personality in 2020. But anyway, so, and then you layer all that onto the energy system, prosperity from that perspective, we're back, but we still have a lot of work to do to correct the damage from the Biden administration and inflation and those kind of things. And things are happening well. I fully support it because obviously I ran on those ideas, and we need to do even more, in my opinion.
All this is fantastic backstory, but there's more that you have done, let's say, within the Make America Great Again movement, Trump world, let's say. So you have a PAC now, a super PAC, right?
Yeah, Gator PAC
Yes.
is a super PAC, and it's got a 501c4 associated with it, Gator PAC Direct Incorporated. When we lost our first U.S. Senate race, we created Gator PAC, and I think we probably raised over the years about $6 million. In the 2024 cycle, I think we raised a little bit over $3 million to help Donald Trump get reelected. And we also helped McCormick win his U.S. Senate seat. And we used that PAC to support candidates that have not been in office for most of the time. You know, there's a guy named Barry Moore over in Alabama. He's got Trump's endorsement running for U.S. Senate right now. He started out as a congressman, and one of our first races to help a veteran, he's an Army vet, was in that race, and he wasn't expected to win it. We didn't have a whole lot of money, but we sent door knockers with flyers out during the race, and he was able to win that race, even though the odds were against him. And why was he able to win that race? Because he had the right message. We only support people that support the message that I talked about, and we support people that have not been in office before most of the time, especially veterans. I created Gator PAC because as a veteran, there wasn't really any place for me to go inside the political campaign corporate culture for a veteran to go where you could talk to other people that are veterans that have been in running for office before and have confidence in what they're telling you, those kind of things. So that's one of the reasons why I created the PAC. And so when a veteran candidate comes to me, one of the main functions that I provide is just answering questions and helping them get through the minefield, so to speak, of the political campaign culture, which is pretty dirty.
You don't say.
Yeah, just a little.
Now, this is where the overlap of you as the veteran, as the kingmaker, as that's what super PACs can help assist in, overlaps with your book publishing ambitions and your authorship. So you have a program, you have a show. It's very popular online, and you've spoken, you've done all the things in the community here on the right. And one of the questions that you had said that you had gotten so often over the years was, well, I don't have a super PAC. I don't know if it makes sense for me to run for office. I'm the person who casts my vote and listens to the podcast like yours. Maybe I volunteer to like knock doors or something like that. But beyond that, like, what can I do about it? You said that that's the most common question you ever get, online, in public, whatever. Rob, what can I do about it? And so the title of the book, actually, as compelling as of course it is actually an answer to the question of what you can do about it. So part of the inception for this book, I understand, is that on the right, we use the phrase black pilling. Okay, that's where this doom and gloom, kind of Curtis Yarvin maxing of you can't vote your way out of this. Things are only ever going to get worse. Oh, you won? Well, you won a battle and therefore are going to lose the war. It is the Bunker Hill moment, particularly for the right forever. Every victory you get expends yourself and makes you that much likelier to lose. Okay, from people familiar with the Bunker Hill experience, I was just there in Boston a couple of days ago. And all the plaques point out how even though the American, various militias retreated, the losses were so heavy for the British, it was effectively a loss, despite the fact that they won the battle. So that's on top of my. Yet that's metaphorically speaking what so many doom and gloom naysayers on the right are saying. And unfortunately, on any given subject, black pilling content tends to go viral. It tends to be widely viewed of, you can't vote your way out of this. Well, Trump is so bad, I'm going to vote for a Democrat. Like, really, guys? What are we doing here? What are we doing? This is just insane. People cope. But for the average person who is a soccer mom or a Little League dad or someone who's just a normal everyday American citizen who thinks maybe we can actually vote our way out of this, but what more can I do? This is the book for them, is it not?
Yeah, it is. You mentioned the genesis of the book is the question that I would get, and that applied whether I was in the military as a non-commissioned officer leading a team, or a commander, or as a person. I've been in county level office, Republican Pacific offices where I've been voted in, or in political campaign town halls. Americans have it in their DNA as individuals, even if it's an American. As long as it's an American citizen from 2 days ago, if they've assimilated and bought into the idea, we have it in our DNA to ask that question as individuals. What can I do about something, especially about issues that get us energized? Some people say get angry about it, and anger is a useful tool for motivation at times. But it's the question itself. What can I do about it? And I wanted to leave a book on the table that wasn't just a biography, because I've been encouraged, as I've told you many times, to write a biography, and I didn't really want to do that. Although I've had a very interesting life. I had great people around me that aren't famous people, like my uncles and aunts and my mom and dad, my grandfather and grandmothers. I've had great people around me when I was a kid growing up. And I tell a story in the book about my uncle, my Uncle Buddy, who was my dad's younger brother. Used to take me around before he had kids, when my dad would take us home for that vacation every year to make sure we got back to West Tennessee. And one day he took me to the courthouse in the county where they all live nowadays. And he said, "Robbie, I want you to know that this is where Congressman David Crockett, told his voters that they could all go to hell. He was going to Texas." That was one of my earliest memories and one of my earliest lessons about Americans, was that right there. It wasn't that Davy Crockett's the king of the wild frontier as the Disney character. It wasn't even about Davy Crockett swinging his musket out of ammunition at the Alamo and dying for the creation of the state of Texas. It was about learning the story of Congressman Crockett, who is from that part of the country, West Tennessee. And that's what was important, because he was the type of American, no education, really, no money. He got elected to Congress because he became famous, okay? Because somebody wrote some books about his adventures, right? and he went around the country talking about it. So he gets elected to Congress and finds himself at odds with the president of the United States, who was Andrew Jackson at the time, because that president wanted to forcibly remove the Cherokee Indians and create the Trail of Tears, which he did, to send them out to the West. And Crockett opposed that. And he looked around and he said, well, what can I do about it? And he used his voice. That's what he did. He ran for Congress. He got in Congress. He used his voice, and then the president got him kicked out of Congress. Then he ran for Congress again because he looked at it and he said, well, I've got the votes here. I just need to talk to the people and let them know, inform them on what's going on. So he got elected again, and he was still pushing back on it. Did he win the debate? No, actually, unfortunately, he didn't. But the president had to use power again to kick him out again. And the result of that was that we ended up with Crockett and his friends inside the Alamo and the creation of the state of Texas, because he was the type of American that I see all Americans as. They see a problem and they sit down and think about it, and they develop this question, well, what can I do about it as an individual? And then they set about to make a plan to actually answer that question of what that is. And that is not something that is typical of nationals in other countries around the world. Even today, you can see it. Just go read social media for a few minutes and see the difference between a European or a British person and an American person and how we talk about different issues or the same issue online and those kind of things. And, that little story at the very beginning of the book lays the groundwork and the framework for everything that follows in the book, using historical stories and anecdotes from not just my life, but other people that I've come in contact with, to lay out that this is America. You mentioned the Bunker Hill, and I'm sure when you're standing on Breed's Hill there, it's an overwhelming moment if you've never been there before and you really have an understanding of what happened and what was going on in the context of that. That we weren't even a country at that time. As a matter of fact, the Declaration was a year away or more. Okay, but as Americans, we came together and said, well, what can we do about this? The British are taking away our rights and trampling on us. They're supposed to be our government. We spent 2 or 3 decades as American leaders and volunteers trying to work through the British system, Joshua, to address our grievances with the British government and the monarch. And it took decades for us to get to the point where we would even sit down together as a group of leaders and try to write down exactly what we were talking about and what we needed to do and to see what we needed to do. But we did it. So when somebody's blackpilling, like I was on a radio show out of New York City this morning, and the person interviewing me was like, well, nobody will listen to us. Tell us about your book. I don't believe that they're going to go do what they need to do. We just voted Mondami in. I think I heard that like 10 times this morning, and I just kept talking about, well, what about going to city council meetings? Or if you're a parent and you're frustrated and you're upset about what's being taught in the public schools, have you gone to a school board meeting? Have you gone to a school board meeting just to listen to them? And then have you laid out a plan to go to that school board meeting again after you've listened to the crazy things they're talking about and object to them and use your voice? I mean, these are not expensive things. They're not expensive things except for time and dedication. So that's one about the black pillars out there. 2, we lost more battles than we won in the American Revolution, and we still won our liberty and our independence from the tyrannical government. We still did it, and it took years, 1775 to 1783. And George Washington was under attack many, many times internally from his own officers, other senior officers writing to Congress trying to get him fired. Okay? Those are the types of obstacles that Americans historically have identified with the question of what can I do about it and successfully overcome. And we did it again. Donald Trump is the modern historical reference that I'll reference you to from what I talk about in the book, and that his second election, not necessarily the first one, which I get it. I ran for U.S. Senate with a plan, a path to victory that we could have won. Okay, not the first one. So I knew he had a path to victory there, and when I saw him give the speech coming down the escalator, even though I was a cruise guy at the time in the primary, I was like, man, this guy, I don't really know him for sure, but he's on it because he was on the same message I was on, essentially. But the second time, look at the travailing events between 2020 and 2020 and November 2024. And think about all of those things, not just with Trump, but all of the things against the American people that were his supporters, that got caught up in the January 6th thing, all of the machinery opposed to us. It's just like going up against the British government and George Washington and his army, his Continental Army, with no money, no country, and what did we do? We put this man back into office. Well, that wasn't a machine that did that. That was Americans looking at it and going, I'm going to do something about this. Because we saw what was right and we saw what was wrong, and we took the right action. Is there vote cheating? Yes. I've got a hat here in my office. There's only 4 of them were made. It's a dark blue hat with gold embroidery that says "Too big to rig." Because we did it as Americans. And that's what this book is all about.
And the book, like any type of a commander who is giving orders to their subordinates, it is step by step with no step skipped. There is no lack of clarity on what to do about it. So it's like, who are you as a person? And then what potential assignments could you adopt in your sphere of influence and at your ability level, your time commitment level. Basically, it's a path to how you can be the absolute best American that you can possibly be. Knowing that we come from a long line of heritage Americans, George Washington, Davy Crockett, Rob Maness, frankly, you truly are a living embodiment of the Americana spirit. And yet everyone who resonates with that is like, yeah, that's amazing. And like, those are those other famous people. And I'm not George Washington. Rob, are you nuts? But you can be the first you. You can be the one who made this change in your district, in your system, in your area, in your industry. And the book helps you do that. Identify the area of change that you have the potential, have the ability, have the resources, have the personality, have the traits to be able to go after, and then devising your own plan to affect that change. And so much of American victory going back, frankly, to the very first Europeans who were not the English in the Americas, they simply outlasted the enemy. I've been watching some documentaries about the first conquistadors who came to America, and they had that same, let's say, frontiersman spirit, that curiosity that said, what's beyond that river? What's beyond that forest? What's over there? And, there's 40,000 warriors, and I'm a leader of an army of 100 men. We have 3 cannons and 40 horses. And it was a mass rout, and the Europeans were victorious. And it's simply a matter of, never tell me the odds, Han Solo, truly kind of an American character. And I think also about the American Revolution. There's a fantastic documentary. I call it the last non-woke American revolutionary documentary. It was called Liberty, 1997, PBS. And I think it's the 3rd episode is about the defeat, ultimately, and the surrender of British General John Burgoyne's army. And it's a fascinating story because he brings this great army that also includes the hired German guns, the Hessians, right? He basically brings his officers and their entire families. He kind of brings aristocratic England with him into this mass caravan of all these soldiers and whatnot. And there's like, on paper, there is no chance that Washington can defeat General John Burgoyne's army. So what does he do? He loses battle after battle, losing one of the most important forts, right, in upstate New York, fortifications. They don't even fight; they just give it up and run away when the British ships show up
Yeah.
on the river, right? You probably
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
But ultimately, what happens is these wilderness frontiersmen, these like pre-Davy Crockett types, just lead General John Burgoyne on an absolute chase through the summer wilderness. And month after month after month, the weariness of the British soldiers increase. The Americans continue to lose the skirmishes. They open fire on the British fire back. The Americans lose a few. The British lose a bunch. And then the Americans disappear into the forest. Very much so like some of the scenes depicted in Mel Gibson's The Patriot. Those are based on very much true experiences all up and down the 13 colonies during the War of Independence in America. And eventually, by the end of the march and the Burgoyne army finally reaches Washington, there are moments of melodrama where the British soldiers just walk out into the field and throw down their guns. They're done. The sickness, the disease, the heat, the attacks from wild animals, the various carnivorous predators of the Northeast American wilderness, just the slogging through swampland and thick forests that were impenetrable, and their laborious effort to traverse and bring across and make makeshift rafts to get across all the various lakes, ponds, swamps, marshes, rivers. They just simply give up. And so Washington's greatest victories come through experiences just like that, where you lasted longer than the enemy. And that is the American spirit of victory. And I think also of George Patton's famous quote, right, about not dying for your country, but making the other SOB die for his.
Yeah.
That is truly the American victory spirit. And it has been since before this place was called America. And the first Europeans here were the Spanish, is simply outlasting the enemy. That's how the greatest civilizations, cities at that time were defeated. The Indians, whom I call the Siberian Americans because that's where they're actually from.
Yeah, that's
right. They just simply surrounded the cities. A few hundred to a few dozen men pointed their cannons at the city, and you have cities of hundreds of thousands of people just surrendering to the Spanish. Just simply being outlasted. That is the American conqueror spirit. That's who we are. That's who we have always been. And blackpilling is uniquely anti-American. That's not what we do in America, is it?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, think about this. There's so many places to go, but think about this. I opened the book, as you know, with a scene. It's been total darkness. It's cold in the deserts on the Arabian Peninsula, and I'm about to embark on a mission to go after the highest value target that America has post 9/11, and the mission is daunting. I don't have the resources to do that mission, but I've got to find a way to accomplish it anyway, and we do it. And we don't do it because Rob Maness was there. We do it because Americans like Master Sergeant Mike Miller, who I mentioned in the book, God rest his soul, who died of cancer a few years ago, way too early. Because he was leading Americans that kept a very limited number of B-1 bombers mission ready, so that I could put one of those over a spot on the ground 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with only 3 airplanes and a small number of maintenance personnel and air crews operating far from our main operating base. And I'm pondering how I got there and all the things that led me to be at that point. And there was more failures as to how I got there than successes personally in my life. For my country, we had been attacked. My country's military headquarters was attacked and decimated in a surprise attack on September 11th, 2001, after I'd served for over 20 years protecting the nation, and we failed. Failures of me in my personal life. I failed out of pilot training and became a navigator instead, but it led me to being a squadron commander in B-1 bombers because I did well at the path that I was took the opportunity to take that was laid in front of me after a failure. That's what Americanism, that's one of the key tenets of Americanism, is we as Americans are so positive and so convinced that we don't have a divine right, but we have divine providence supporting us from our creation, before our creation as a country to this day. We are so convinced that we can and should be the force for right in this world, even for prosperity, against tyranny, and for liberty, that we will overcome all failures in order to get to the victory, which is securing freedom and prosperity for our children and our grandchildren and future Americans.
And that's what it's about right there.
That's exactly what it's about.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Everyone I talk to who cares about this stuff, Rob, they're always talking about their kids, their grandkids. Some even are old enough to have great grandkids. A project I'm working on right now is Haitians of Springfield. Like, it's the first book on the American migrant crisis of mass foreign influx into Middle America, which was done punitively during the Biden administration to punish largely working class white Trump voting communities because they were not able to defend themselves. That's what people tell me. Like, we were punished for being white with Haitians. And when it's blunt like that, that's just simply the way that it is. And you talk to them about why do they care? It's like, well, to quote Congressman Brandon Gill, I want my kids to grow up in a country they recognize. And we see population replacement. We see the artificial inflation of asset prices, the difficulties of family formation, all these things. And it can feel overwhelming, and the temptation to black pill be overwhelming. But to quote that Italian-American New York City cop that went viral, he said, "We don't do that in America." And that is something I've taught my son, by the way, a little reframe. When we see some foreign individual engaging in supremely un-American behavior, I make sure to note to my son, we don't do that in America. International law. The United States has to be in submission to the International Criminal Court. What did the Trump administration say? I believe it was with Todd Blanche, right? Again, we don't do that in America. And we think about the future of America. I have another book coming out later this year about basically the two paths where we choose some combination, unfortunately, of Mamdani-style socialism in every city and every state that's blue or purple, and then allowing for neo-Bolshevik type behaviors from your Tyler Robinson to your Luigi Mangione, and the left is praising those behaviors, the rank-and-file, normal, anti-American Democratic voter, unfortunately, because truly the Democrats have truly become an anti-American party, explicitly. A small majority, or not, I should say, rather, a small minority of Democrats are proud of the United States of America, right? Something like 90% of Republicans are proud of the country, right? But it's like, I think it's less than 30% of Democrats are.
27%.
70% of Democrats aren't even Americans anyway.
Yeah.
Truly, yes. So when we think about the future, each of us, especially in the wake of the losses of Charlie, and of course there's a moving tribute to Charlie in the book, I think it was actually via Charlie Kirk that you and I met. We were connected by Jack Posobiec, our mutual, but it was Charlie who provided that opportunity.
Yep.
Each of us has to step up and do something, and simply just be an American with a capital B, a capital A, and then another capital A, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I was so pleased to see President Trump call out Mamdani for what he is, and these Democrats that we're talking about that don't love this country anymore, they're communists.
Yeah.
But it's a much more dangerous form of communism, if there can be one. I mean, you're a historian, Joshua, so you understand world history in the 20th century and early 21st century probably better than most. But if you can imagine that the Soviet and Chinese style communism that is responsible for millions and millions and millions and millions, I think it's over 100 million people dead at the hands of their governments. This form of communism that's rising now, that the president just called out, that you and I have been talking about for several years, some cases decades, it is Islamism wearing communism as a skin suit. That's
Yeah.
an even more dangerous version of this because it's nuanced. The nuance comes in with this ideology that is telling people it's a religion that tries to take advantage of our First Amendment rights, but it's really a tyrannical ideology, and it comes in. It's initially talking about tolerance and freedom of speech and freedom of worship, and then it gets a foothold. The foothold's about 10% of the population in any given place if you go back and study it historically around the world. And then it gets a foothold, and you start seeing blatant abuses of women, blatant abuses of animals like dogs, blatant abuses of children. You're seeing that today in pockets around the country.
And not to interrupt you, Rob, but
in
the same
United
thing is
States.
happening in Springfield, Ohio, because when
Yeah.
when you have a mass influx of foreigners who have no interest in assimilating, and that's not even expected of them, what happens? Assimilation happens. Americans assimilating, being forced to assimilate into third world ways. Speaking of Islam, I was at Boston University just a few days ago, right? And there's this, the student union has a Muslim floor, where in the student union, the floor is halal, or it's not haram, basically. The architecture of Boston University has been designed not so as not to offend the religious sensibilities of Muslims. And there are signs posted throughout about how we as Americans who aren't Muslims, how we need to respect those religious beliefs of Muslims. And I just thought, here in the heart of the American revolutionary spirit, they come here and they begin their conquest. We don't do that in America. And
No,
yet
we
there
don't.
are so many people in Boston who aren't Americans anymore, who are at these universities. I found myself on the campuses. I did a really long walk over several hours. Harvard, MIT, Boston University. There were a number of other universities there. And as I'm going around, and it's on a weekend, so you've got people who are some locals ready to study. It was about 70% female, largely white, and about the 30% who were there, vast majority were not white men. And I thought, oh, okay. Diversity, equity, and inclusion just simply means no white guys. And you can see what's happening. Where you have like an obviously Muslim individual, a man, as a couple with a white woman. You see that over and over and over again, and then you begin to wonder, how did Islamic civilization conquer southeastern Europe, Eastern Europe, the Iberian Peninsula? What did they do? And then I have this reframe. It goes like this. You've heard this, of course. The usual frame is all warfare is based on deception. Reframe. All warfare is based on conception. We find ourselves in a, frankly, biological, not simply political conflict in the United States. Population replacement is therefore necessary. And then, racist.
Yeah.
What do you say when people level? I'm sure they level those accusations as you, and it's of course racist. Like, oh, you're white, therefore you're racist. I started getting that when I was 17 years old in college for the first time. I had a Mexican Latino and a Jewish female professor. They told me, Joshua, because you're white, here are all these horrible things that are true about you. And that was 2008, 2009. I experienced that. I can't even imagine how bad it is now. That's enough of that rant. Rob, what are your experiences on that? How do you respond when someone calls you racist, because you're a successful white guy?
I first heard the words white privilege aimed at me by black female political activist at Harvard University's Kennedy School when I was a student there in 1995. That's the first time I heard it.
31 years ago. Wow.
Yes. Of course, I think I said at the beginning of the show, neither one of my parents were high school graduates. My dad's dad was a farmer, but he made so little money at it, he had to take a job as the janitor at his kid's school in order to make ends meet. So when I heard that frame aimed at me, I said, "You got to be kidding me. Are you serious?" She said, "Oh, yes, you come from privilege." And I said, lady, I'm paying for this tuition right here. I had to beg the Air Force to let me come on a paid sabbatical event, essentially, but I'm paying the tuition out of my pocket. And I'm from poor people. I'm not from rich people. I'm the first college graduate in my immediate family, quite frankly, and far from any privilege based on the color of my skin. And she insisted that because I was white and male, that I have an automatic leg up, even though I have experienced discrimination because of my background, even because of my aeronautical rating in the United States Air Force. I've experienced discrimination before in the workplace, and I know what it looks like. But she insisted. And it wasn't until years later that I started finding these books about critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion not too long ago, and actually reading them, and I go, oh, that's where she was coming from. And look, my performance in the United States Armed Forces in uniform is very well documented. I performed at the highest levels possible. I was a commander 4 times, Joshua. That means I had young Americans directly under my command. The average person doesn't realize that as a commander, you have almost unlimited power over the individuals under your command. Unlimited. You operate the legal system. You supervise the legal system, even though you're not a lawyer. The prosecutors work for you. The law enforcement works for you. Everybody that runs the facilities works for you. The people that fly the airplanes work for you. All sorts of folks work for you from all walks of American life. And they're all volunteers, whether they're in uniform or they're civilian employees of the United States government or contractors. It doesn't matter. And I had not one complaint against me. And most people that retire as full colonels or higher have at least one inspector general complaint against them. It usually has to do with workplace discrimination, like not being fair to women or being racist and those kind of things. I had not one complaint against me. And these people have the audacity to say that just because I'm a white male in America, that I'm a racist and I'm a white supremacist. That's happening today. What do I do about that? I push back as aggressively as possible on that every single time. I don't accept that. There was a time when I might have been quiet because of my position in uniform and those kind of things, but nobody ever accused me of being a racist in uniform. I just mentioned I didn't have any formal complaints against me because I was what? I was an American kid that came out of cotton fields. Literally, my mom and dad met in a cotton field, hand hoeing cotton for his dad when they were teenagers. Literally, I came out of cotton fields of poor farmers that just believe in the country and want to do what's right by their families and by their country. And I've never had that accusation leveled against me until in the last 15 or 20 years. And that is because I had the audacity to enter the political arena and push back against this stuff publicly. And I'm pushing back against it today. And many Americans are. I'm very proud of what's the Americans in South Mississippi. There's a young man, almost 19-year-old young black guy who's a football player for a local community college, all-star athlete, grew up with white and black friends, best buddies, and he went missing and died somehow on an island on the 4th of July. And there's big investigations and national coverage. Al Sharpton and Crump are involved now. CRUMP, the attorney, Crump, they're involved. And I'm just praying for this kid and his family because he was such a good guy, and his friends love him, and it's obvious that, but they're being attacked. Those friends that were out there with this kid on this island were all white kids. And as soon as I saw the picture, I'm like, oh, no, this is probably not good. And I hate to have that view, but that's what's happening in America today, and that's exactly what's happened on social media. But I'm very proud because I go in and I've looked at social media every day since this incident occurred, and I see people pushing back on this. What do you mean? Why are people coming down here and protesting? What are they protesting about? The investigation's not even over yet, and those kind of things. But there are others, the ones on the other side, that are making death threats against one of the white kids' moms and their little kids, their families, and those kind of things, and saying the police are covering something up. Well, the investigation's not even finished yet, and they're doing that. And they brought these people like Crump and Al Sharpton in, and just day before yesterday, there was a big march of you've probably heard of these guys.
Yes.
It's the Hebrew National Israeli something or other.
They've
They're
been
really
in
an
Springfield. Yes,
extremist
they've
group.
been in Springfield protesting.
They're
on
really
behalf
an
of the Haitians.
extremist group. Well, they marched through Ocean Springs, Mississippi the other day in military formation. Now, I didn't see any weapons, but they were obviously there to intimidate in the hundreds. And I've been attacked by these people in New Orleans before when they were standing on the street, and I happened to walk by and they started yelling at me for being a white guy, and I confronted them about it. Verbally attacked. They didn't do anything physical, but that was the first time I'd ever run into those guys. That's the same guys that got the kid in trouble up in D.C. It's the same group. The black guy with the drum, the young guy that got attacked by CNN and won a big lawsuit. I can't remember his name, but it's the same people, and they're coming down here or going to Springfield, and they're being divisive when it's not necessary to be divisive. What's necessary is for Americans to see this stuff for what it is, call it out, and then call for unity and do the things that will generate unity. And that's really, I'm kind of proud of what I'm seeing down here in Mississippi, because I see that, and it doesn't matter what their color of their skin is I'm seeing people saying, no, this is not right. We should come together. And I think that's a good news sign.
Yes, I expect so. That reminds me of, fun enough, it's featured at the very end of the one of the episodes of Liberty 1997. Mm-hmm. And it's quoting a British poet who spent the entire American Revolutionary period documenting his experience going through American towns, colonial era, both loyalist and patriot communities. And this poet, this journalist, documented his experience and what he witnessed. And he was there at this surrender at Yorktown of General Cornwallis's army. And he described, he said, these well-trained, most powerful military in the world. They are there, and they are basically laying down all their arms, their everything, just like all surrendering. And standing across from them are a ragtag group of what do not look like soldiers at all, but rather civilians, the victorious army. And he said there's farmers and there's smiths, and he can tell from the appearance that there's maybe a lawyer, and there's a statesman, and they're dressed not even like soldiers, but all manner of different wear. And he said that there's people who have the English heritage, and that there's people who are, obviously from what he could tell, that are Dutch, and there's also French who joined the American cause, and there's a few Indians, and there's free black men. And he described the spirit of these people. He calls the Americans, he calls us a new race of men, wholly unlike the Europeans that they have defeated. And this is why I'm very much against any type of this white ethno-nationalist type of stuff that feels supremely un-American. Like that's the sort of caste, class, and race-based enclaves feels very much old world. My friend Michael Gimmerin describes what I'm talking about, this new race of men, as a transnational American identity. There are people I know who have, let's say, Indian, as in Indian ancestry, who are American in adjective. And I think this is what is a great issue of our time. I'd like to get your take on this. There's to be an American as a noun, okay? This is the problem with birthright citizenship, is anybody can sneak across the border. Yeah, you have a kid, or you're a Communist Party of China. Go to Guam. Yeah, you have an American citizen kid now, and then never come back here again, but vote in the elections, right?
Right.
Corrupt, supremely corrupt. That's to be an American, the noun. But to be American is an adjective. It is a descriptor. It is of your nature and your traits. And that, I think, is open up to so many people of so many different places. I think you and I have both met people who have Korean ancestry or Vietnamese who are supremely American in their behavior. We've also met some Europeans who may look exactly like us that are just repulsively not American, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Not to put down the Europores, but we've all experienced that. I have transacted, let's say, with some British people who are classist in a way that is almost the same sort of vitriol that you got from the Harvard professor, that kind of that DEI woke person that you mentioned at Harvard University.
Yeah.
I've experienced that in true classism from British people before. Supremely un-American, both of these worldviews. So there's that subject, but I'd like to get your thoughts on everything I've said here the past few minutes. What resonates, or do you disagree with anything I've said?
Look, the word you called me an Americanist, and I use the term Americanism from my friend Dennis Haw in the book intentionally. That is intentional on my part because to be called an Americanist is what you described. Remember, I said it doesn't matter that if you became a citizen 2 days ago, if you have adopted the DNA of being an American, you're an Americanist. You believe the things that we've talked about during the show. You believe it's the same things that the baker or the doctor or the tradesman or the farmer or the frontier, the trapper believed in 1775 when they walked out of their homes and volunteered for the Continental Army and said, "This is who we are." The British government is not who we are. And all of those types of societies are not who we are. Can we be friends with them? Sure. We've had alliances. Our first alliance was with Morocco. And it wasn't because they loved us. It was because we pummeled them after their Muslim ways got them in trouble with us, of stealing our ships and enslaving our people and those kind of things, and requiring tribute in international waters. Does that sound familiar? And we can be allies with them, but they'll never be us. That's what you're getting at. They'll never be us. Look, I think so. I've served with Haitians that are Americanist.
Yes.
They're not those people that were forced on Ohio, in Springfield, Ohio. There may be a few of those that have been able to assimilate because they saw it.
I want to interrupt you there, Rob. Can I interrupt you real quick? So here, the great irony of depending who you ask, is between 15 and 34,000 Haitians who showed up in Springfield in 2021, 2022-ish. So there have been a number of people that I've talked to who had Haitian neighbors, Haitian colleagues or whatever, who are like, I want to be from this country. I don't like where I'm from. I don't really resonate with that culture. I want to be American, right? And I want to be an American, adjective and the noun, an American American, okay?
Yeah.
And so you know what they did? They self-deported back to Brazil, Chile, or Argentina, where they had been living, so that they can go about it through the process, so that they can get their green card, they can get their visa, they can get their thing, and have a pathway to citizenship. So the Haitians who want to be Americans have, in many cases, long ago left Springfield, Ohio. In the great irony about the American influx of immigrants and migrants.
I am not surprised by that because, when I first started running for office, I mentioned that a major plank of my three major planks was securing the border and stopping illegal immigration. My most ardent supporters, Joshua, or Hispanic Americans who had immigrated here legally and gone through the process because they wanted to be an American. An American, not just in name, but in this Americanist idea of what we've all been like from the very beginning of this experiment, that Americanism is what they're after. It's not just getting benefits like the Haitians that are left there. I'm sure they're getting great benefits from the state, local, and federal level, and they have a good life compared to what they have, and they're creating havoc in Springfield, Ohio, as I know, because I've seen you document it and other people document it, because they refuse to assimilate. They just want the good life and the money, and it has nothing to do with being an Americanist, but Americanism has everything to do, and the reason why we must act at the local level as much as possible is to preserve that Americanism and root out those that don't want to be an American for real and get them out of this country because we have been invaded. Invaded is the right term, whether we've enabled it through our politicians or not. We have been invaded by cultures that are antithetical to the Constitution of the United States and that declaration that we so much are celebrating this year. And now we even have politicians that are in elected office that are not Americanist. They are globalist or Islamist or a combination of the two, but they even get supported by parties like the Democrat Socialists of America that want to destroy the Constitution of the United States. We have to get them out also. But how do we do that? Is we come together as Americanists, regardless of our background, regardless of when we became citizens, and we insist that this country is preserved for us and our children and grandchildren, and not for those that want to destroy it. And it's becoming more and more clear and evident that we have millions of people here that want to destroy the country.
Yes, and I think where all of this kind of comes together into the what you can do about it is this is happening in, unfortunately, they're targeting conservative enclaves, conservative communities, largely conservative Trump-supporting areas. That's where you need to be the most involved. You think, well, oh,
Right.
you know, my county was 65% Trump. Yes, and now you're a target. Okay, for infiltration and for dismissal and for all the things. You know, people say, try that in Texas. Don't mess with Texas. And it's like, yeah, they're building exclusively Islamic cities in Texas. What do you think is happening here? They're trying that in Texas. Yeah, they're doing it. It's working. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's really happening is there's people. I've seen it called a red, green, brown alliance. So red being literally the communists, the democratic socialists. And then the green is like the progressive, the crazy environmentalists, the hyper woke people, the vegans. You know, I'm going to take pot shots at that ideology because I was part of it for so long. Okay, everyone has their sins.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Hey,
the brown
none of
refers
us
to,
are
like,
perfect.
You know, it refers to like the global South. Okay, those largely Islamic countries. You know who we're talking about. Okay. The red, green, brown alliance is anti-American, explicitly anti-American, and it's that alliance that has encroached into and has decided to overrule the Democratic Party. And so that's the force that we find ourselves against. And it is supremely un-American in all of its instincts. There's a couple of anecdotes I think that are worth sharing here. Benjamin Franklin became largely pro-independence for the United States, what would become the United States, the American colonies, because of a trip he took to Ireland, which was under British rule at that time. I believe this is in the 1760s. And he described the Irish people as the subjects, the servants, and simply outright the slaves of their British rulers. And of course, the Irish potato famine we all know about was a planned event by the English, by the British. That's one of the worst aspects of that, of the horrific Irish famines that killed so many people. It was a planned event. Not even to get conspiratorial, it was just, well, they're basically subhuman, is how the British rulers saw their Irish subjects and their whatnot. And of course, there was a period of slavery and indentured servitude that many Irish were sent to the American colonies and even the early American states, and you could buy your Irish slaves. Of course, the woke people have claimed that that's all a conspiracy theory, but it's all documented. There were Irish slaves in Ohio, just in the Ohio country. Just wow. Anyway, Benjamin Franklin saw the future of the of the states if they did not become the United States and remained basically if they remained British America. He saw the future subjugation of what they'd done to the Irish, their closest neighbors, and that spirit was coming to, of basically that horrific classism was going to come to America. And then John Adams, I believe he was, if I remember correctly, he attended Harvard University. Yeah. But at that time, your grades were based on your class. And he did not come from a British aristocratic family. So his grades were set automatically lower than those who came from aristocratic British families. No matter how well he did at Harvard, he would never be allowed the privileges of those outside of his class. And what are we just describing? That's DEI at Harvard University. The entire Ivy League system, all the gate-kept ivory tower institutions of the United States are treating Americans just like John Adams was treated for the same reason. And John Adams' view was, I want to advance to the level of my ability, not fall to the level of my birth.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And really the danger of that type of activity is exactly what you see in the British royal family today. They may be in the higher class, but they're not effective. They're not the smartest. They're not the most inventive. They're not the most innovative. They've actually been dumbed down. And the same thing happens to institutions that accept this. That's why our military institution and the Department of War in our services is so important, because we have to have the best of Americans that volunteer to do that. And then the best of that cohort has to rise to the top to be the generals and admirals, so that they can give honest advice to a president, regardless of whether they agree with their political views or not. But that's one example of where it's been dumbed down to where you're putting people in that are not the best of the best of the best, and you get poor decisions out of that. That's exactly, I believe, what happened with the debacle of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. DEI positions were filled with DEI cohorts that had not been the best performers, and it was a long line of diversity first, we're all equal, to the inclusion of then the word equity into it, where we put our thumb on the scale to make sure somebody that's in a specific cohort, whether it be sex, gender, race, or whatever it is, we put our thumb on the scale under DEI to make sure that the numbers are right. Well, the effectiveness goes down. The success rate goes down. And you end up with huge errors being made because the right people are in the right jobs at the right time, with giving the best to America. And that's exactly what happens. Same things happen to the royal family. The best people that should be leading that country are no longer leading that country, because that family's been so dumbed down from the past. And the same thing is happening in those governments all over Europe. The best people are not rising to the top. As a matter of fact, in some cases, many cases, they pass laws to prevent it from happening. And we need to make sure that where it has happened here, it's removed. And where it's about to happen here, we stop it and we prevent it from ever happening again.
And right about now, people are thinking, wow, I'm resonating so much with this. What can I do about it? To which we would say, well, there's this little book. There's this fantastic little book. It's not so little, actually. It's a good long read, but an easy and fast read, called What You Can Do About It. Oh, really? Where is that available? It's available on Amazon, and I am pleased to, of course, share that I contributed the foreword to the book. It's one of the best forewords that's ever been written.
I agree.
Yes, What You Can Do About It by Rob Maness, retired colonel from the United States Air Force. Thank you for joining me today. So much good stuff here. People, you're loving what we're putting down. You want to hear more, just go read Rob's book. Thank you for your time so much today. And where can people follow you on social media?
You can follow me at Rob Maness, ROBMANESS, on most platforms. My biggest audience is on X, and there's a at COL Rob Maness fan page on Facebook. But if you want the bonus chapter to the book, go to robmaness.com/bonus chapter. You can sign up for the bonus chapter there. It doesn't cost you anything. And if you haven't bought the book yet, when you get there, click on the banner ad at the top, and it'll take you to the Amazon page. You can buy the book on Amazon.
And there it is. Thank you so much, Rob, and God bless America.
God bless you, and God bless this country and its future.